My mother took me to meet my grandfather. I was around 9 years old, very tender young man. We drove out to a shanty shack in Lawrenceville, Illinois, where my mother had grown up as an abused child because her father was a violent alcoholic and her mother had been thrown out when she became ill. And this man was a whoremonger and a violent, whiskey drinking drunk who was extremely intelligent, but his shotgun kept even the sheriff away. And my mother almost starved to death a few times. Well, now, I didn't know all of this, so I didn't know what I was in for. But when he opened the door, actually, he didn't open the door. This mentally retarded, uh, well, I won't go into it. But anyway, she opened the door. And there was my grandfather sitting on the floor of this filthy shack with food and all kinds of dirt and filth. And he had 2 cigarettes and he had 2 little children, 2 little tiny boys, about 2 or 3 years old. And he was teaching them to smoke and he was laughing and he was drunk. And I looked at this and I was appalled. And my mother said, "I wanted you to meet your grandson." He didn't even look up. And after a few minutes, I said to my mother, "Would you mind if I went outside?" And I went outside and I was waiting for her. I was standing by a fence and there was an old tree and the tree was very dirty. It was a filthy, dusty tree. I'll never forget it. And while I was standing there, it was like the Lord was trying to speak to me. I could feel something. It was almost like a camera was taking a picture, and that this little picture would be in my mind for the rest of my life. And what was the picture? The picture was that God was telling me, this man, this grandfather, is in you. Now, right now, you're a young boy, but someday you'll become him. This is basically the doctrine of original sin. That grandfather Adam is in you. And that when he fell, because he's in you, you will have a fall. You were born with inherited sin, and it's going to manifest sooner or later. And so later, when, like my brother, I became an alcoholic, and all of those terrible things started coming to pass, I remembered that day when a little digital snapshot was taken in my memory. That old dirty tree. And this is the doctrine of Chet Kadmon. And notice when you read this story in Bereshit chapter 3, you see the fruit of it, that there's an alienation. That whereas before there was a fellowship between man and God, now that fellowship has come to an end. And there's an alienation. And there's a hiding from God and an alien relationship, a lack of relationship with God. And that's why we need someone who doesn't have that connection with Adam. And this is why the virgin birth of the Mashiach is so important. And in this translation that took over 30 years, in the preface, there's a whole teaching about original sin, showing that it is in the Hebrew, it's in the Bible, especially the doctrine of the virgin birth, which means that the Mashiach did not have this this relationship to an earthly father, and therefore he is able to save us.